The position of the fiscal court. Anybody want to question the position the fiscal court's in? Basically, I don't mean this wrong, we don't have a dog in the fight. This is a venture between you and this company. Now, if this company harms you in any way, then we would be somewhere where we could try to get in here and protect our citizens. We've got that duty. But basically, this is between you and this company. So tonight, what we're offering you is a venue where you can exchange information. You can ask questions, and we've got a panel sitting around here who's going to be asking questions. You can ask questions, and they will hopefully answer the way they want to answer for you. What's being said, they answer it, and it's all fabricated. I don't have anything to do with that. You ask a question that's silly, that's your problem. What we're offering you is a venue to exchange information. So basically, that's the fiscal court's position. Tonight, I'd like you all to stand, and I'd like to have a word of prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you so much that you blessed us with this great nation in which we live. Dear Heavenly Father, the great community in which we live. And we pray, dear Heavenly Father, tonight that the exchange between this company and the citizens of Pendleton
under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, those that don't have agenda, please.
Great, thank you, Judge, and I truly appreciate the opportunity to speak to the community here in Pendleton County. This is an exciting new opportunity, a new project. And my name is Bill Lawson. I'm with the Williams Companies. To my left is Mike McMahon. He's General Counsel of Boardwalk. Keith Isabel, who is with Williams. He's in our outreach group. Jim Curry with Williams. He's with our land acquisition group. And then we have Ron Whitaker at the end, and he is out of our operations team. So it is a great privilege to be here this evening to discuss this project. There's terrific opportunities for both Kentucky, the United States, and even Pendleton County. So moving forward, let me introduce the sponsors of the project. Now, there are two principal sponsors of the project, Williams Companies, which is a 105-year-old organization. We've been in energy infrastructure the balance of that time, and we have a great deal of experience in operating pipelines, energy infrastructure assets. In fact, we have over 15,000 miles of natural gas pipelines in the United States, running up the East Coast to New York and the West Coast as well. We operate NGL lines, 1,400 miles of those lines. Gathering systems, over 10,000 miles of gathering systems, processing plants, and other energy infrastructure assets. Our partner, Boardwalk, also has a great deal of experience in energy infrastructure, with a particular emphasis on natural gas transportation. They operate about 14,000 miles of natural gas distribution transmission lines as well. And their principal, one of their main divisions, is located here in Kentucky, and that's in Owensboro. They have 315 employees in the Owensboro area in Kentucky. And so they are certainly not new to the state, and they've been around a long time. In fact, Boardwalk's been here, or Texas Gas has been here for well over 50 years. When you think about the two companies combined, we move about 25% of the natural gas that's consumed in the United States. So we have a lot of experience in energy infrastructure. Now, there's been a lot to do about our commitment to safety. Both of our companies are extremely committed to safety. We want to operate and will operate a safe system. We do a number of things to make sure that the safety and the appropriate measures have been taken, including aerial inspections of the pipeline. So all of our systems that are in place, we fly over them at least 26 times a year. We inspect the ground. We're looking for any anomalies that may be out there. We have regular patrols, whether those are people driving by the property where the easements where our pipelines go across, or on foot just double checking valves and looking for anything unusual. But we also pressure test the systems before they go into operation to make sure that they have the adequate strength and capabilities to handle the volumes of liquids that we'll be moving. We inspect all the wells with x-rays to make sure that those are good connections, those joints are solid. And we always use high tensile strength steel, thick pipe to make sure that these systems have the capability to withstand any kind of movements, take into account any special geography, topography, geological conditions, or cultural conditions in the area. And we run lots of other types of tools, robotic tools through the pipelines just to ensure that there's no stress cracks or anything else in the system. Now, as further evidence, there's the 811 system, because at the end of the day, we don't want, we want you to have all the tools necessary. That if our pipeline, if you granted us a privilege of crossing your property with an easement, then we'll mark that pipeline with markers so everyone should know where it is. But if somebody wants to come in and dig within that 50-foot easement that they've given us access to, then we would ask that you call, use the 811 number, you call us and we'll come out and we'll mark precisely where that pipeline is, because no one wants to make it against it. And as you know, accidents, if they occur, more of those accidents occur because someone hits the pipeline. You may have seen in the press just last week where Chevron had an LPG line that was hit in Texas, 60 miles southeast of Fort Worth. Now, no one was injured in that incident, and they evacuated some homes and some of the residents in that area out of abundance of caution, which they should do. And so, just letting you know that that's why this 811 system is in here, so that you first call, we'll mark the lines, and then you call. Now, there's been other questions that have been raised over the time that we've been up here in Kentucky about karst formations, and the concern that some residents have that we won't pay enough attention to those karst formations and the unique characteristics of those formations. Well, both Williams and Boardwalk have a great deal of experience in managing karst situations. First of all, Boardwalk's been up here for over 50 years, and their pipelines do cross some of those karst formations unique to Kentucky. Williams has operations in over 36 different states, so we're not unfamiliar with areas that have unique environmental characteristics. Here's an example of our system in Florida, which runs right into the heart of a major karst series of formations, and we took all the necessary precautions. It was brought online in 2002, and we, where we could, we avoided the karst formations, and in those areas where we couldn't help but cross karst formations, we made sure that we had adequate provisions in the systems and the pipes, so that if there was a cave-in, that the pipeline could withstand the added pressure. Once again, I hit on Boardwalk's capabilities here in Kentucky and their experience with karst. Now, the bigger picture here is in the United States, we've had a tremendous revolution in energy, and we're well on our way to becoming energy independent. In fact, some pundits are saying that North America could become energy independent by the end of this decade, somewhere around 2020. And one of the epicenters of that revolution in energy is occurring up in the Marcellus and the Utica, Pennsylvania and Ohio. And so that's what the big picture is. We're trying to take natural gas liquids that are naturally occurring, that are being produced up in Pennsylvania and Ohio, down to marketplaces or markets along the way and all the way to the Gulf Coast, so that they can be manufactured into other products that we use every single day in our lives, plastic materials and other things like that. And this is important because this is a tremendous opportunity for the United States to grow our capabilities, and a renaissance with manufacturing is certainly occurring in this country. Here's just sort of a picture of the general concept of the Bluegrass Pipeline, connecting supply basins with demand centers along the Gulf Coast. Now here's just an example of how we're coming into Kentucky. We're planning to build about 80 miles of pipeline in the state, and that's about 1,500 jobs during the construction phase. There's a picture of what it would look like during the construction phase, and then afterwards, you can use your property as you see fit. The only thing we ask is you don't build a structure on that property or plant trees along it, because we need to see the right-of-way. But other than that, you could farm it, use it for recreational purposes, grazing land, whatever the case may be. And those are actually examples of Boardwalk's right-of-way right here in Kentucky. Now, this is just a couple of economic benefits that could accrue to the state if this pipeline comes to fruition. And as we look at the ad valorem tax, because we're building a new pipe, that could mean another $136 million in tax revenues to the state. As I mentioned earlier, over a 10-year period, by the way. As I mentioned earlier, 1,500 jobs during the construction phase, and then we're well on our way to paying this out, $30 to $50 million in property payments for the easements for this right-of-way, for the grants of right-of-way that we received. So there's direct benefits to the state. There's also other benefits that maybe aren't as obvious. You know, there's new developments down in the western side of the state, in the Illinois Basin, where some producers are looking at developing oil and gas properties in that region. It's the New Albany Shale. It's another area that's being developed. And by having a pipeline like this, that gives encouragement for further development. Because after all, this infrastructure is very expensive to put in. We'll put in billions of dollars developing this infrastructure, and that'll help allow producers to go and develop those resources if they're in commercial quantities, which means more jobs.
All right, Bill, we've done over now, and if somebody wants to see more of this presentation, we'll allow Bill and his team to stay here later on if you've got some more information. But I want to make sure we get our questions answered. That's what you came here for tonight, and that's what we want to do. So I'm going to start off with the questions that I've been given prior. So I'm going to start off with Jim Lockwood. Jim, you want to come up to the podium, stand in front of the microphone, introduce yourself, and where you're from in Pendleton County, and then state your question, and then we'll hope that somebody can answer their question. And Bill, if you will,
sure, I'll
guide that question out of you.
Okay. My name is Jim Lockwood. I live on Highway 609, which is just downstream from Kincaid Lake State Park. And a few weeks ago, I noticed some survey markers on park property, and I wasn't sure if they're for Bluegrass Pipeline or not. Now, just recently, I've got a hold of some internal emails from the Kentucky Parks Department and the Finance Department that show that surveying was done without the permission or the knowledge of the park director, the park manager, and other people in the organization. So, just like with the KSU property, the research farm, where surveying took place without permission, I'd like to ask for an apology.
Jim, can you?
No, you're on. You're live.
Well, we actually do have permission to survey the Kincaid State property.
You want me to read the legal counsel email I have here that was obtained from an open records request?
Well, the state of Kentucky has individuals with the state agency that take care of the survey permission for state-owned properties and parks.
Correct, and they granted permission after the fact. When we read this email? Have you seen
After the fact?
Yeah, it says here, this is a request from a reporter. In order to answer it, the legal counsel from somewhere within the Finance Department Parks said the company began surveying our property at Kincaid Lake State Park without prior mandatory permissions. The park manager, Jeff Octor, notified central office. After confirming that the necessary permissions had not been obtained, this guy in the email told the park manager to remove the stakes and notified the Finance and Administration Cabinet, and then contacted the company. After a lengthy discussion with the Finance Cabinet employees, the company filed an application for right and use to survey the property. This is after the fact. After consideration by the Commissioner of Parks, a few other people, blah, 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 this letter granting the right of use was sent to the company. And towards the end of the email, it says, in response to the reporter that was asking, use as little of this information as you feel satisfactorily answers the reporter's questions.
All I know is, we went through the proper channels, and we do have survey permission for the Kincaid State Park.
So no apology then.
I'm not sure what I would apologize for.
Okay. Thank you very much.
All right, you will turn off your phones too, because I don't think that's your mind. All right, Bart Johnson, we got a question for you. You got a question?
Bart Johnson, I'm a retired fish and wildlife officer, and really, I'm not doing a great job. The thing that is involved here is if you own land that they're surveying, okay, that's fine, and you negotiate or they negotiate, that's fine. You better think about your neighbors. Here's records of at least 250 cases of problems that occurred off the property, the 50-foot easement, the downstream people. So if your neighbor is negotiator. If you're the downstream person, or if the wind's blowing upstream, if you're the upstream person. Better think about those kind of things. It's not a question of when these pipelines are going to have problems. It's going to happen. But you need to think about your neighbors before you finish your negotiation.
All right, and let me ask you not to, what this as far as to get questions answered, please. And, you know, I mean, I could get up here and debate this company all night long, and that's not what we're here for. I understand Bart's comments, he's trying to inform people what's going on, but I want to make sure the questions get answered. When you got something that you want to know, I want you to get an answer for it tonight. That's what this meeting's all about. I mean, we could get up here and slam this company, and they could, you know, it could be a debate all night long. That's not the point of this meeting tonight. So, next question, Pat Stanley.
My name is Patrick Stanley. I'm a Grant County resident. I'm a recent new landowner in Pendleton County, down on Crooked Creek Road. And I've had some discussions with your office already. And basically, I have several questions. I don't know how many if I'm willing to.
Let's go with one question right now, and then if we've got time,
I'm pretty short and easy. It should be easy answers. I'm riding the fence. I'll be perfectly honest with you. I haven't made up my mind one way or the other. Your safe surveyor is one cruise out in my place today, tomorrow, and Wednesday, and then also last Friday. I was wanting to know what the life expectancy of the line is, like how soon in the future would it have to be upgraded, if any, and if there is repair work to be done to that in the future, are you restricted at that point to the 50-foot permanent easement, or can you go beyond that like you're doing now with another 50-foot temporary construction easement?
The steel pipeline, especially modern steel pipelines, have a life expectancy of many, many years. The Texas gas lines that would go through Kentucky were laid in the early 50s. Two of them were laid in the early 50s, the other one was laid in the early 60s. And they are still very viable pipelines. They are very safe pipelines. If we have a need to repair on the property at a later date, and we have to go outside the 50-foot right-of-way, then we would sit down with you or any other landowner and work out arrangement to use additional property to compensate the landowner for the additional property we would need during the period. And if you're a farmer, which you didn't say, but if you were a farmer and interferes with your crops, either the repair or the additional space, you'd be compensated for those as well.
Fair enough. And if I may, sir, one more. How close can you have center line of pipe to the actual line itself, property line? Like if I have a fence on a property line, how close can the center line of the pipe itself be to that fence?
Ron, you?
I've asked them to hug the line so they can reroute it and then they move.
Let me see if I understand your question, and maybe I'll give an answer. And Ron, please help me, or Jim, is let's say you want to hug the pipe, your property line, and we put 50 feet with the outside right on the property line and come in 50 feet. Is, based on constructability and other issues, we try to center the pipelines generally in the middle of the right-of-way.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there are times we'll move, right or left to center, but we typically like to put it in the center.
Because I've seen a lot of your maps where it's sort of like 50 foot and you got 25 and 25 for your construction. I didn't know if you could do 50 foot right on the line and then do 50 foot for your construction on the other side.
A lot depends on how they're laying out the spreads and for construction across multiple lines.
So it could be a possibility you could add that 25 foot from the line. I have more, but I don't want to take that.
All right, yeah, let's do that. Joel Mitchell?
Thank you. I'm Joelle Mitchell, and I live on 154. I'm not near the pipeline to my knowledge. I do have an environmental studies degree, so obviously I'm very concerned about this issue. But I do have a question, and it deals with, I want to know how deep under the Licking River we plan to go under because of our mussel population is a highly endangered species. So I'd like you
pipeline would be somewhere between 30 and 60 feet below the bed of the river, by the construction technique we would use. But Melanie and her group have been doing environmental surveys up and down the line. One of the specific surveys we have done I know some of the water bodies is a mussel survey. Did I do all right? Thank you.
Wallace Prince?
Yes.
You want to come to the microphone, please, because everything tonight's recorded. Please let me explain that to you. If you say something here tonight, it's being recorded. Mike, can you get that speaker? Figure out what's going on with this car. There's room in here, you know, let me say this, if the law enforcement comes in here, the fire department, they're gonna shut us down with what you've done just here. This is 15 seats in the corner here. I ask this group here to get in, come in here. There's a speaker in here, you can hear what's being said, please. Because at least one aisle, please take it down one aisle and move in here. There's 15 seats in here.
Yeah.
And there's a speaker in there, you can hear probably better than you can out here, because if the fire marshal comes in here, we're gonna shut the meeting down and nobody's gonna get accomplished what they do. Thank you, Mark. I understand. Sir, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Mr. Prince, there you go.
All ready?
All right, go ahead.
My name is Wallace Prince, I live in Grandville. I want to make a statement the best way to oppose this pipeline.
Well, sir, we're asking questions tonight.
Well, I told you what I was going to do.
All right.
Is do not heat your house with propane. Do not buy any plastic. Do not buy any cars that have plastic on them. Do not buy any soft drinks in plastic bottles. That's about it.
All right. Thank you, sir. And I'm going to butcher this name, I know it. I'm going to spell it so that I make sure I got it. John, Krehbiel.
John Craig.
Craig Mark, I'm sorry. I'd rather not butcher it.
I'm Pendleton County resident, and I'm here basically just to try to learn more about what this process is. Question I have is, I kind of wonder why it can't go all the way to Louisiana. I thought maybe there'd be customers or companies domestically that would be closer to the source of this material, would be able to add value to it and use it.
Sure. Well, there up on the map, there's a company, Westville. It's getting NGL, natural gas liquids from another source at this point in time here in Kentucky, but they're producing some of those materials. But the way the industry is organized today in the United States, the balance of the manufacturers of these products are down the U.S. Gulf Coast. So there's some reasons, there's infrastructure, and it gives them some competitive advantages. But as we've discovered more and more of these resources, they're looking at building facilities in the Northeast as well. There's some facilities up in Canada, but right over here at Calvert City, Westlake's facility was struggling just a few years ago. And with these new reserves and new supplies coming online, they're actually expanding that facility because they have a world-class advantage. The rest of the world doesn't have access to as low-cost feedstocks as we have in the United States, and that's why you're seeing a resurgence in American manufacturing. And this is really just the start of it because it tends to ripple through the economy as you get down further the road. Think about it. The average car today has 600 pounds of plastic in it. And so here in Kentucky, you have access to low-cost energy. You're the third largest producer of cars in North America, and you now have access to low-cost plastics. And so that's how world-class competitive advantages are being developed. We say in the industry, a renaissance in American manufacturing.
I was wondering, are there government incentives being provided by the state or the federal government for this project?
No, we have not asked for any type of incentives to build this project. This is all shareholder money.
Roger Hurst?
Thank you, Roger Hurst, lifelong resident of the county, and I use the park quite a lot. And I know earlier question was brought up about surveying in our park, a primary tourist attraction. And I'm quite concerned about that to some degree. I mean, many people have different views on that, but I guess my question is, let's say if the pipeline goes in, who gets the money? Does the state get the money? Does it go to the general fund, or does it go directly into our park budget to develop programs that we have in our area that we would want to develop?
Jim, do you know who would receive the check at least?
Well, the owner of record of the park. So who would be the owner of record of
Leave that with you.
The finance department.
finance department?
So I mean, what goes to our county, basically, is our primary tourist attraction, we may not get to see that check in our park.
I don't know as far as that goes, as far as how the allocation of the funds go from the state into,
Just in general, my thinking was that many landowners, I believe, are concerned citizens, and they would get a check if they let it run through their property. And with the park being in our county, I wondered if the check would go there.
well, the check would go to either landowners that own the property. So if you have landowners that, we would give them an immediate check for the easement that we would acquire all over their property. As part of,
Well, that may be something you want to take up with your political leaders too, just to advocate so that those funds are used within Pendleton County. You know, you will receive some direct funds and new ad valorem taxes that would accrue to Pendleton County because of the pipeline we're building, the value of that. And that was a part of the number that I put up there, the $136 million over 10 years.
And we'd be glad to follow up and share it with Judge Marshall to see what the state says.
I would greatly appreciate that. Maybe any other visitors to our park would. I thank Henry for being here, and I see Tom is here. If he could possibly check on that at the force as well. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Pamela Coulter?
Hi, I'm Pam Kutcher, and I live on Warner Lane, which is just off Lenoxville Road. My question has to do with where the pipeline is going to cross the Licking River, approximately a mile and a half upstream from the water intake for East Pendleton County Water District. And I want to know who would be responsible for testing the water, what they would test for, and how often that would be done.
Well, I mean, we certainly would, if there was a leak that was detected in the vicinity, then we would test the water in that area to make sure that there wasn't any presence of natural gas liquids in the stream or the water. Melanie, do you have any other comments?
No, that's correct. We work with the state environmental agency and testing for the state's drinking water standards.
I guess that doesn't quite answer my question. Without regular testing, how would a leak be determined if the pipeline is completely leaked?
Well, we're monitoring the pipeline 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So we should notice pressure differences. Ron, do you have any other comments from an operations perspective?
The system has an electronic leak detection system, and it's monitored in our pipeline control center 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, so that by noticing temperatures and pressures along the pipeline system, minute leaks can be detected with the electronic leak detection system.
How quickly does water testing be done in the river or in the water to safeguard the water supply?
So you're saying that there was a leak detected under the river? Is that your
No, I'm
question?
saying if
there was one, then what would be the response time?
We would mobilize crews immediately, and then we would work with the local officials who do water testing. If we thought there was actually product getting into the river, we'd work with the local officials and
Councilman Paxton?
I'm Ann Paxton, and my family has a canoe rental on the Licking River, and they've already mentioned the mussels, and my children and grandchildren play in the water. So if there were a leak in your thing, what type of chemical, or would there be gas that would cause irritants in breathing and whatnot? Or I don't know what all the fluid is, or the, benzenes, or, what is the danger if and when a natural disaster even would affect the pipeline? We've seen so much tornadoes and flooding. We had flooding here, I've seen, and we had city or county water lines that crossed the river right through my property on Hay Station Road one time, and so it was above the water level, and they dumped a lot of the cement on top of it to protect it. I just am wondering what are the dangers if and when, something would happen.
Okay, well, to answer your question, and, as I stated earlier, we take safety very, very seriously, and we take all the necessary precautions. And so, when you think about it, what we're transporting down this system are naturally occurring natural gas liquids, ethane, propane, butane, natural gas liquids. And so, the pipeline is buried underneath ground, so it takes away many of the risks that you were referring to, whether it's tornadoes and other things. But there, you could have floods, and I think Ron can probably address some of those issues around flooding, because we had some experience where in Colorado, where we had a 1,000-year rainstorm that recently passed through there, we exposed some pipeline, some of our pipeline, and we took necessary steps.
But I think, if I understand one of your concerns is this pipeline will actually it will not be buried within the stream. We will do a drill where we will take the pipeline well under the bed of the stream. So even if the stream floods and it's set back far enough, that typically we're not seeing any erosion to the pipeline in the case of a flood. But as Bill said, you have the natural gas liquids that will be transported through the pipeline.
And there have been stories of sinkholes, swallowed whole houses. And I even saw some of that when we were on Whidbey Island up in Washington State. And if, a sinkhole showed up, or is that what your surveying would tell you?
Yeah.
That it's not an unstable area?
Well, that's one of the things. We're looking at the maps and all the marquee information and geological information you can find. We're doing flyovers and looking at it from the air. But also, it's important for us to have, access. If someone grants us permission to do a survey, they're looking at those unique characteristics and looking for, expressions of the karst formation, so that we can take that into account when we're designing and developing a pipeline. Now, Ron, you may have some additional comments on this topic.
Well, the way the construction material of the pipe and the way that the pipe is laid, it's not like a brittle stick. There's some give, and it will has the capability. If there were a sinkhole, we had a situation like Bill talked about in Colorado within the last 6 months, where approximately 70 feet the pipe was exposed. The pipe did as it was supposed to do, maintained its integrity. We went in, we remediated it, we covered it back up, and it's built into the safety features of the system.
And we have some pipes that we operate here in the state, and some of them in Bowling Green, where we've had, sinkholes develop around the pipeline, and they've not created any operational issues for us.
But if there's a breach, and you guys were able to identify by anomalies and whatever, would it turn out and spread as a harmful aerial thing, you know, something we breathe that will suppress our respirations and stuff, or what is the danger?
If, let's say that the pipeline, let's take it from under the river to where it's more likely to be buried somewhere between 3 and 5 feet deep. If there is a leak, the pipeline, the liquids are being transported in liquid form, but when exposed to air, they tend to vaporize, they will rise. You know, some of the constituents such as ethane will volatilize quicker than propane and butane in the natural gasoline. It typically does not, it stays in liquid form. It will dissipate over a relatively short time depending on weather conditions, which is the reason that, you know, if there is a leak, we will tend to evacuate an area, safety, and over, you know, within hours typically, the product will dissipate. There may be some in liquid form that may not be in liquid form.
And I'd like just to add, you know, pipelines are the safest way to transport these types of products. And as you may have seen, there have been Department of Transportation studies, and the rate of incidence of an accident occurring on a pipeline is only 1/100%. You know, you're 37 times more likely to have an incident with a rail car than you are with a pipeline, and of course trucks and others. So this is a very safe form of moving these types of products, and well, we strive for 100%. Hopefully we're getting closer.
Andrew Combs.
Good evening. Thanks for having us. Let me first start off by saying I want to congratulate your company because you did find a great county to do business in, because this county sold its soul many, many years ago to environmental issues. And we know what those existing companies are. So you did have your act together. I speak from the heart. I speak as a landowner. I'm talking about a 3-generation farm. It's hung on a very strict road. And at the end of the day, it's about all me and my family have. And this is what you're going to do. This is the common land. 3 generations. Sweat. Tears. Blood. Over here is where the easement's going to go. This is where the pipeline's going to go. And I'm going to look outside my window every morning, like I do. And I'm going to walk my property every day like I do. And what am I going to see? I'm going to see a pipeline. But I don't guess that what I see, I don't get no type of compensation. See, seeing has a compensation too. Seeing things that most people in the concrete jungle don't get to see. And I'm very displeased in that. I'm also concerned, and I know this isn't part of the forum, and Bart Johnson, I want to congratulate you on what you said. And as a citizen, that's what we need to do. All I'm going to say is, we're not going to sell this cheap. And I kind of point the finger at our court, who sounds like they're brokering this, or not brokering it. It's awful easy to step back and wash your hands of this. I want to know what comes to me. How does this benefit me? I mean, I've seen structures built in this county where I know people who have small businesses that never got no part of the action. And many of us know those people. We live by those people. So you're gonna bring a bunch of outside company, I mean, I saw them in the orange shirts, I don't know them. All I would say to the citizens of Pendleton County, don't sell this out cheap. Make it pay. Thank you.
Ed Salerno.
My name is Ed Salerno, and I've been a resident in Pendleton County for 28 years. I always have to think of how old my son is because he was the first child that was born here. And I have a couple of concerns. One of them has to do with the way you the way you gentlemen present yourselves. Are you a corporation?
Bluegrass?
Yes, are you a corporation?
Bluegrass is a limited liability company.
You are a corporation. So would you say, is it fair to say that your number one concern is profit?
As Bill has already said, our number one concern is safety.
I don't believe that. Thank you for your answer, but I don't believe it. Not any good corporation in this country is going to get by if your number one concern is safety. Your number one concern is profit, if you'll excuse me. And I get angry when I get this stuff in the mail that says our primary concern, safety is our priority one. I believe it is as far as the law pushes you to be safe. But in this case, with regard to NGLs, there is very little law, and you know it. Very little law. And so you can push your way through and get what you want with a few bucks here and a few bucks there. But I hope you have hit the wrong county. The other thing that concerns me is that when you speak about your company, you speak long and loud about natural gas. And I think that's great. It's a good part of your company, and it's a well-controlled product. And the pipelines that it runs through are controlled by federal and state regulations. But this material, NGLs, are not controlled in the same manner. And therefore, they present a tremendous danger to anybody who is anywhere near them. And I happen to be too near where your pipeline is going through. And the value of my property has already started plummeting. You're not going to do anything about that, and I don't expect you to. But I really appreciate your willingness to come here and listen to me rant. Thank you.
Judge, there is one spot part I would like to respond to.
Oh, please.
Your statement is that these are lightly regulated pipelines, and the safety, constructability, that is simply not accurate. These lines are regulated by the Department of Transportation. There is a whole section that is dedicated to how these pipelines must be constructed, how they must be operated, how they must be inspected. It is very similar in the differences between it and how the safety of a natural gas pipeline are regulated are based on the product being transported. The underlying rules and requirements under the gas rules to operate for safety, construction, and the like are essentially the same as they are for natural gas liquids.
Then why is it that you seem to be against an environmental impact study?
Well, what I would say is this, is there are two agencies looking at different aspects of this project. One is FERC, looking at the abandonment and the environmental impact of the abandonment of the Texas gas line. That agency has decided that environmental assessment is the appropriate mechanism. We have not filed our application with the Corps. The Corps will ultimately decide whether an environmental assessment or environmental impact study is appropriate. You know, the suggestion that an environmental assessment is not a full-blown environmental review is also inaccurate. It is essentially the same as environmental impact study, except the number of times people get to submit comments. But the courts ruled consistently that environmental assessment meets all the federal requirements for environmental review.
Well, sir, just as a point of clarification, when you talk about natural gas versus liquids, and this is a liquids pipeline.
Yes.
If you look at 49 CFR 192, that's DOT, those regulate natural gas pipelines. If you look at section 195, those are the rules and the regulations associated with liquids pipeline construction and operation. So it is just as regulated by DOT as the natural gas pipelines.
Are you saying they're identical? What's the difference?
The products are different.
What's the difference in the regulations?
The products, the regulations relate back to the characteristics of the products that go through the line.
For example,
Who's up bigger than the other?
Wait a minute now, let's be civil. Let's make sure we're civil.
For example, the number of times that you inspect a natural gas liquids line, Ron, please make sure I don't misstate this. It's 26 times a year, not to exceed 4 weeks, 2 weeks. Okay. So you have to fly, typically we fly these lines because you have to do it every 2 weeks. You physically can't get people out on the ground and walk them with that regularity. On a natural gas pipeline, it's depending on the number of people that are around will dictate the number of times you must inspect. And I think, you know, most areas like this, it's once a year for inspection, or is it twice a year?
That would relate back to high consequence areas, and there are those associated with the liquid systems too. But yes.
I appreciate what you're doing and what you're saying, but I'm concerned about before you put the pipeline in, what are the regulations? What are the differences or the similarities in the regulations between a natural gas pipeline before you put it in and the NGL pipeline before you put it in? Are they identical?
Are you talking about siting?
I'm talking about before you're allowed to put the pipeline in, what does the government say you have to do?
On a natural gas pipeline, if it is an interstate, then you must get a certificate of public convenience and necessity from the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission.
Okay.
And in giving that, they dictate the route which the pipeline company will propose, and then they will do the environmental review. And they are the lead environmental review. On a natural gas liquids pipeline, there is not the concept of getting a certificate of public convenience and necessity because it is regulated from a rates and tariffs perspective by FERC, but under the Interstate Commerce Act, it does not have a siting authority. So you will go to the lead agency, which on this pipeline it will be Corps of Engineers. We will present all of our environmental data, which is remarkably similar to what you would present to FERC. They will then decide whether or not the project warrants an environmental assessment or environmental impact statement, depending on which one they select. They will then be the lead agency and acquiring all comments from all supporting agencies, and then they will make the environmental determination.
So tell me if I'm not hearing you correctly. With regard to a natural gas line, you're required to get the study. But with regard to this line, you can submit the paperwork and they can decide whether you should or shouldn't have this.
No, it's just it's a different process. If I go to FERC with a natural gas line, as a pipeline company, I will suggest whether or not I think they should do an environmental assessment or environmental impact statement. You know, based on the size of the project, the scope of the project, regardless of if you suggest it's a pipeline company A or B, they may disagree with you and say, no, I want to do the other. That is for a try. In this case, we're going to submit essentially the same environmental data that you would to a FERC on a gas pipeline to the Corps of Engineers. And they will act as the lead agency, and they will make the determination on whether an environmental impact statement or environmental assessment. We will have been working up to that time with people like, we've got listed up here, like Fish and Wildlife, all the environmental agencies, cultural agencies, and that will all be in the data that we provide the Corps on this project. So you're going to have a lead federal agency that is going to determine what is the environmental impact of the project.
So our job is to convince them that they should.
I don't know what
That's I see my job at this point is to convince Corps of Engineers in Louisville, do the study.
Well, they're going to do a study. The question is whether they think the environmental assessment or environmental impact is all that's required.
I think it is, so I'm going to suggest to them that they do. Thank you very much for taking time to answer my big questions.
Thank you, John.
Sorry.
My name is Stacey, and I'm a lifelong resident of Pendleton County. I live on Percy Creek Road where the pipeline is apparently slated and right by me. To be quite honest, there's so many things I would like to say, but I'm going to try to keep this brief. I'd like to say I really appreciate these mailers I've been getting. I'm sure there's plenty of other people who are getting these with the adorable smiling children and the slightly out of focus happy parents in the background, proclaiming that safety is priority one. However, I have also seen your safety record, the Williams Company specifically, showing that earlier this year you did have a leak in a much smaller line in Parachute, Colorado, that leaked 10,000 gallons before it was detected. It contaminated both groundwater and soil, which means apparently those electronic devices that are supposed to pick up leaks, I guess, did not catch it quickly enough. I also found out that OSHA did fine you for not protecting your workers that were cleaning that up. And I also found out that earlier this year in June, I believe, there was an explosion at a Williams-owned plant in Louisiana that injured 114 of your workers and killed 2 of them. Zachary Green, who was a 29-year-old man, and Scott Brewer, who was a 47-year-old man. And I'm having a hard time reconciling the 2 things. How you have blown up your employees at one factory, and I am supposed to believe that my safety is above your profit. And I guess my question is, if I talk to those 114 injured employees, or the families of Mr. Green or Mr. Thrower, or all of the residents in Parachute, Colorado, what are they going to tell us as the citizens of Pendleton County? Do you believe that they will tell me that safety is your #1 priority? Because my concern is I don't believe I can trust a company that in this year alone has done these 2 things. How am I supposed to trust you to be by my head? I don't want the next meeting to be saying Stacy Meyer, who was blown up in Pendleton County. Can you answer? Do you think the family of Zachary Green would stand here today and say, let them come in, safety is their #1 problem?
What I can say is that we have been working with the investigating authorities on each one of those incidents tirelessly, and we have been very transparent in giving them all the information they need. In reference to your questions about Parachute, Colorado first, it was a gauge that was outside the facility, a gas processing facility. It was a little ways away from the piece of property, and it had a very small leak, so it wasn't detectable by our systems. So we changed those, and that leak spilled for a while. And when it was discovered, when we walked on and we discovered that there was a leak off the property, we immediately reported to the federal agencies and the state agencies, and we began remediation and worked to clean up that spill. And if you would ask the state of Colorado, they would say we have done everything we've been asked to do, and have been very very proactive and working quickly to resolve those
And
problems.
I appreciate that answer, but I do just have to ask, if you can say a gauge failed, what's keeping the gauges from failing here? And I appreciate that you say you went in and cleaned it up just like the state of Colorado expects you to. I'm not sure that's good enough.
The point is this was a very different operating environment. This was a small 4-inch piece
And
of
ours
pipe.
is gonna be a big 24.
Yes, and it will be monitored with different systems, and they're sensitive to Ron, is there anything I'm missing on parachute that you would like to add?
Let Melanie
I was gonna refer to you,
Oh.
because I learned the information from you, so either way.
What happened with the gauge? And we talked about the leak detection system. Yes, it was a Williams gas processing plant there in Parachute. What happened with the gauge is that it was not monitored by pipeline control, those folks that look at the system 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Since the investigation took place, that particular piece of equipment has been included on that 24-hour monitoring. So, to your question, no, it wasn't at that time, and hopefully we're a company that learns lessons and that we improve our performance based upon those lessons. I don't know that anybody or any corporation that is 100% all the time, but we have learned from that. We have made adjustments to that. So, and when you say 10,000 gallons, that's a lot. But when you look at the period of time that leak actually occurred, it was a small leak. So things have been done to change the way that piece of our assets are monitored.
Well, I do hope you're a company that learns lessons, but more importantly, I hope we're a community that learns lessons.
One thing I would like to mention is that both our companies have a core set of values and beliefs, and safety is right at the top. Well, I respect at the top, and that's, and I apologize here, but I wanted to take note that, those are important things that we take to heart. We want to keep our employees safe, we want to keep the public safe, we want to keep property owners safe. And that's a priority for all organizations, so we take it very seriously. And we take it to heart if there is an incident. That doesn't feel good to us either.
Thank you very much for the time, and thank you very much for the work.
Mark Gribble?
I'm not Mark, but I am his wife, and I'm the one that wrote the questions. I actually have 2 questions, and I think you fully addressed the first one on safety and security, and I appreciate you doing that. The second question that I had, literature put out by all companies involved, talk about giving back to the community. Not only would the individual landholders, of course, financially benefit by this, but you also talk about things that the counties will be able to derive from pipeline going through. I was wondering if you would discuss that just a little bit and talk about exactly what you will be giving back to the communities. And in addition to that, could you give us some examples of maybe, I know you talked about grants, some places where grants have been awarded and some examples of what the community has been able to derive from that.
Well, first on our grant program, for 501c3 organizations, including the emergency personnel, including school groups, are eligible to submit the request. And we have lots of requests that come in, as do all the companies involved in this project. And that's just part of our core values for giving back to the community. Now, specifically, Ron's work with where he does a lot of his work, and we recently worked with some federal emergency management folks, or some local emergency management folks, and they received some equipment.
Well, it's community giving, and we work very closely. Bill said operations. I actually work in the safety group, and we work very closely with local emergency response agencies. We partner with them. We train with them on an annual basis. We do drills. In other words, we practice, if you will, or train around responding to an incident. And part of our community giving is that we actually give monies back to these local emergency response agencies for them to purchase equipment or whatever their needs may be. I work for Support Overland Pass Pipeline, which actually goes from Wyoming across Colorado to Kansas. And within the final quarter of this year, we distributed around $2,000 to local emergency response agencies that are associated with the county center of Cross.
Now today, we have a community grant program we closed earlier, and we'll be making awards here in December, and we'll reopen and do another one. So we're making $25,000 awards. And as we pointed out, we got applications, and we have a soft spot for emergency management, education, recreational type uses, anything that kind of helps the broader community as a whole. And so we've had one open season for the community grant programs. We'll have another one that starts in February because we do want to be good partners in the community. We're going to be here for a long time, and so we want to have good, strong relationships. Now, as Ron is pointing out, we do have this ongoing relationship with the emergency management team. We train, we want to make sure that we're all prepared, and we take all prepared on the same day as the same.
Will that be an ongoing program?
Community grant programs are ongoing.
And could you also address the tax?
Let me add one more thing, and we'll kind of go, we'll switch back and forth on the tax. Examples is, we've got pipelines across some near schools and other things, and we have scholarship programs. Likewise, we work with the emergency responders and help them with needs that they have from time to time on equipment. So it's a true partnering between the companies and the communities, and this is something that, a lot of, once pipelines are up and running, it's something the local operational folks help identify needs for the people that they work with in the communities. We've done a wide variety of things, but those are kind of the two most normal. The ad valorem taxes that are paid to each county are based on the assets that are actually installed in the county, and then you take the value of those assets times the
take those under those waterways. But what about the creeks of smaller crossings? I'm concerned about floodwaters. You may cross them, but how high above the creek will you be, and how will you protect them in the case of a flood? And we do have major floods on these creeks.
Well, we're going to directionally drill the major waterways and go underneath them. Any other comments, Melanie? I mean, as we come across, bodies of water, we'll make a decision on how. But the pipeline's going underneath the ground, so it's not going to be above the ground.
Every creek, every crossing, no matter how small they are.
Yeah, we will not lay them on top. This pipeline will be buried at least 3 feet deep in every place that it's capable of being buried. If it's pure rock, you may not get full 3 feet, but every place else it'll be buried at least 3 feet below.
But as I have a creek on my property, and it's essentially a dry creek, but it does pick up rainwater, and it does carry quite a bit of water at one time or another. That also will be buried?
Yes.
Yes.
No potential at all for the lines to cross creeks above ground. Is that correct?
I can't think of, Ron, I can't think of any of the APIs doing that these days.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Jerry Halpin?
Hi, I'm Connie Helton. I live in the northernmost part of the county, and excuse me, most of my questions are very simple and can be answered by yes or no, and they're mainly just offshoots of things other people have asked. One is, have any scientists, other than those paid by you, such as the lady over there, indicated that the pipeline is a good idea environmentally?
I don't know that anybody's thought the advice of any scientists other than those who we've asked to do the studies required by law.
But if you think about it from a broad perspective, if you're going to move these types of materials from one point to another point, pipelines are the safest form of transportation to move this type of material.
I'm sorry, but that has nothing to do with my question. My question is, have any other scientists, other than those you paid money to, have they come out in favor of it? Because everything I've read, and I've read everything you sent, and everything that's been in any publication that I did about it, and not one of them has ever said it was a good idea in any way, shape, or form, except for your company's profits.
You're about to say,
Like I said, we have not, and generally pipelines, when they get ready to build a pipeline, do not seek broad input. They know what they have to do to get their permits, and they know what is required by the environmental laws, and we comply with those laws. And, you know, if people have concerns, they have the opportunity during the environmental reviews to express those concerns, and the federal agencies will evaluate them. I'll let one of our folks.
Yeah, we
You
consult.
paid by them? Do you work for them?
Yes, I work for them.
Then I'm not concerned with what you're going to say.
But she may be able to offer some additional color as to how we go through the process. It
No,
may
I
help
don't need to
address
know
some of
about
these
the
concerns.
process. My question was that you have not sought out anyone who's not paid for by you.
But we have gotten, you know, a Kentucky State professor recently published an article. He's a physicist at Kentucky State, and it was carried in local papers, indicating that pipelines were a safe transportation, and he offered ideas on how it can navigate through the karst formations. So there's a scientist.
But Melanie, let me see if I can help here. Is each aspect that we work on is we bring in, if we're doing cultural resources, we bring in people who are essentially archaeologists to do the work. They present their findings to the state cultural. People who are doing the wetlands survey are trained environmentalists who, in this case, are working for NRG. They have to submit their data for review.
What is NRG?
NRG is an environmental firm. I mean, each aspect of this is we have trained professionals, you know, some of which are scientists. They're pulling together the data that we submit as part of our overall application to the regulators. And all you guys do.
Well, and what I would like to add is, you know, we are doing a tremendous amount of environmental studies, and we are providing that data to both federal and state agencies, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, Department of Natural Resources, the state historic preservation offices. A lot of these agencies don't have the data we've been able to provide them. So it's one thing, we work with them on a daily basis. We work with their requirements, we take their guidance, their advice, we have to get permits through them. So their scientists review all the data we submit. And I would say most have been favorable from the standpoint of the data we've been able to share with them, because that's a lot of data that they don't have. So we're able to identify maybe that they didn't even know that we're in a river or a forested area. So there's a lot of benefit that we're doing by doing these surveys.
Okay, this is an offshoot from something the gentleman over here asked. If safety is your number one concern, why do you only follow state regulations? Why don't you do an environmental assessment or allow the government to on every project if safety is indeed your number one concern?
Well, as I said, on the pieces being implemented, the FERC is going to do an environmental assessment. On the new build portion, we will present all the data that Melanie is describing to the Corps of Engineers, along with all the data input from the people like Fish and Wildlife, cultural, and they will make a determination on what type of environmental review is necessary. And then they will do that environmental review will be conducted based on the base data that we provided.
And we're not only just serving for the state, we're serving for federal agencies. We're also serving for local county agencies that also have requirements to protect their watersheds.
Okay, this is something I'm surprised hasn't been asked yet. Will you take people's land by eminent domain if they do not grant you an easement? Have you done so as of right now?
No, we have not.
Will you go to that if
Well,
that happens?
what I will tell you is the exact same thing we've been saying all along, is the two of us have put in a lot of pipeline, and we've kind of calculated we have used eminent domain less
43% acquired already in the state of Kentucky. And here in Pendleton County, we're at 66% already acquired. And no, we have never even talked about eminent domain. We have not had to, even use that at all. So we have really people that are very excited about the project.
You've obviously got a lot of the pipeline build as of now.
No, we haven't put it.
Not here, I mean, you've got none of it so
We
far?
haven't started.
No, we're just acquiring the easement.
Acquiring the easement.
So you get all your easements before you even begin building?
That's the plan.
So I guess thank you.
You said we have 66% of the easements already in Pendleton County.
Yes, ma'am. More than 66% already acquired easements.
So why are we having this meeting?
Why are we having this meeting? Informational questions from.
Yeah, we're just trying to get information.
We were invited by the judge to be here.
Carol, Crowell.
Ordered by the judge.
Carol Cribble, I live in Pendleton County. A lot of the questions that I had have been answered. I had a whole list of them, so that's good. So landowners, in other words, are only going to get one payment, even although the pipe might be there indefinitely for 100 years or 50 years. They only get paid once.
What we will do is we will purchase an easement, and that's the 50-foot easement we've talked about. And to the extent that we need temporary workspace, we will pay the landowner for that. And to the extent that the landowner is also growing crops on the property, then we will pay that landowner for the crops that are damaged. And Jim, I'll let you kind of talk a little bit more about how we are compensating the farmers for their crops.
Sure, absolutely. And there's some crops that you need to pay for over multiple years, 2 or 3 years, for the crops to actually grow back. So we're very flexible in working that out, and that's all going to be spelled out in our easement agreement with those farmers. And so in that case, they will be getting multiple checks from us for their crop damage that they incur during the pipeline. And the easement payments, once again, we'll work that out with the landowners as well. They'll get that money up front. They can take that money and go out and improve their property, go out and buy vehicles, trucks.
But this easement, then is there, I mean, we're tree farmers. So
We have timber that will take care of your timber loss if you do have timber
right,
loss.
but the trees won't have to grow there. Although trees will grow there, because that's what happens around here. You don't plant trees and they grow anyway, and so who keeps this clear?
We do.
Okay, so you're gonna come in onto the landowner's property on your easement and you're gonna mow it or whatever.
Yes. I mean, that goes back.
If it's not in crop use.
Yeah, assuming it's not crop use, but yeah, we maintain the right of way because it goes back to what Ron has said before is that we need to see the right of way. And as part of our safety programs, we will be able to see the right of way.
And so, and a little different, you already were talking about the tax, what the county, who over a 10-year period will the company be paying tax to it? Will it only be for 10 years?
Well, no, it'll go on. I was just giving you an example of what that might be. So we'll pay an ad valorem tax in each one of these counties where we build a new piece, the new pipeline, and we'll pay that as long as it's in use.
Some might call it property taxes. It's another way to describe the ad valorem.
For example, the Texas gas line, which has been there since the 1950s, we're still paying property taxes in those counties, and we will continue as long as they're in service.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Kyle, French? Henry, they've already answered my question. Carol McGlashan?
I apologize because we can't hear what's being said. We hear Henry Bertram, we hear Keith Isbell, at this point, this map doesn't tell us much. Do you really know where in Pendleton County this is going to start and end at all at this point?
We do have a proposed route that has been surveyed out, and we're still out there doing our cultural surveys and ecological surveys and wetland surveys at that point. And yes, we have already started acquiring the right to put, our 50-foot easement in. So we've acquired some easements already in the county along the proposed route.
So you have contacted property owners involved?
Yes, ma'am. We're in the process of doing that currently, and we have been on the ground visiting with those landowners for the last few months, and since about the first part of October, we started our acquisition, which means going out to buy the easements with the landowners.
Here in Kentucky, we've actually had to add land agents because of the interest of landowners calling us and saying we'd like to visit with you about this process.
We've already put into the state of Kentucky over $16 million into the pockets of landowners to acquire the right on the easements themselves. And yes, we have had to add what we call agents, which are individuals to go out and negotiate with the landowners on the project here in Kentucky because of all the excitement that we've had, people calling us and wanting us to move the route onto their property.
What about protection from polluting groundwater?
Well, the pipeline's going to be designed with thick steel, and so we'll take into account the unique characteristics of the property, anything special that we need to try and design for. But when we build a pipe, it's made of what, 1.5 inch thick steel. It's very thick, and it's designed so it's not. We're not planning on having leaks, and we're monitoring it 24 hours a day, and we're taking meticulous care of the line so that we can ensure its safety. Ron, do you have other comments you'd like to make?
Well, and safety's become a dirty word this evening. We do take it very seriously, and when you look at safety, there's personnel safety, there's public safety, and pipeline integrity, and there are things that we do to ensure the integrity of the pipe itself, the asset itself. We monitor it. We also do what we call inline inspection. It's actually an electronic tool that we push through the line while it's in operation. It looks for anomalies in the pipe. It looks for corrosion, internal, external, and identifies those. As we identify those issues with that piece of pipe, the tool identifies the exact location of that anomaly in the pipeline system. We go in, we inspect it, if necessary, we replace that piece of pipe, we make a sleeve on top of that. But besides that, there are the aerial patrols that we've already talked about, 26 times a year. It doesn't exceed 2 weeks between those. We do visual surveys of the pipeline right away. So there are things that we do, we continually do, to ensure the integrity of the pipeline itself.
And I misspoke. We're using 350 wall pipe, to be precise. I misspoke earlier. We're using 350 wall pipe.
So it's your responsibility to maintain this?
Yes, absolutely.
Another thing that we do in addition to the inline inspection, as far as corrosion, we have cathodic protection. We'll actually inspect the pipe, and we keep a small electric charge on it that does fight corrosion on the outside of the pipe. So in addition to wrapping the pipe, we have a cathodic protection program to ensure that we monitor any corrosion that may happen to the pipe. And like Jim said earlier, if you maintain these pieces of certified the way that we maintain our pipelines, then their lifetime is certainly extended. And it's an investment that we want to make sure that we maintain. And it really is, safety really is a concern. We're very serious about it. I'm not going to use the word priority. It's kind of been overused.
And that photo up there is a picture of the pipeline control center that you've heard them speak of this evening. Kind of looks like NASA.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mark Isaacs.
They've answered my questions pretty much, but to answer, we are construction workers. We're merely here to try to acquire jobs, provide for our families. And I do want to take a moment to, the landowners are gracious enough to allow us to work on your property, that we will respect your property and we'll leave it better than we found it. Over the last couple of years, we've been through thoroughbred farms, soybean farms, multiple kinds of land and property that you can imagine, and we don't feel satisfied if we are doing that work. But we do appreciate you guys and appreciate your time. Thank you.
David Gray. I'm David Gray, and I live in Anderson County, which is also along the line. And it's my understanding that you keep mentioning Calvert City as a terminal point for the use of these products. Could be a terminal point. So there's a possibility anywhere along the line, if a company wanted to relocate to Anderson, Pendleton, Grant, any of the counties along there, they could tap onto that and have a whole new industry in these counties.
Well, the answer is if there's an opportunity for industry to move into Kentucky and to expand facilities, yes, they could go places where they're invited. And they could have access to those natural gas liquids to produce products and sell it. So in essence, they could have an opportunity to create jobs in the state and add to the state's employment and economic base. Right now, over in Calvert City, that's where Westlake is located, and they're adding and expanding their facilities. And it's possible that somewhere down the road, having infrastructure like this could lead to more facilities being developed right here in the state.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that I understood there could be a possibility somewhere along the line that a facility could take advantage of I-75, I-64, and the Bluegrass Parkway, somewhere in that triangle, that an industry could come in and create jobs for Kentucky.
That's correct. And the other thing Bill mentioned at the beginning of the talk about the new Albany Shell is one of the things with each of the shell developments that has really spurred developments in certain areas versus other areas is the existence of infrastructure. The two most expensive pieces of infrastructure needed to move, to develop a shell plant is natural gas transmission lines, which are in place in that part of Kentucky. If Bluegrass is built, the NGL takeaway capacity, so that would be the two most expensive pieces of infrastructure needed for producers to actively develop the new Albany Shell would be in place, which would also bring jobs and revenues in the state of Kentucky.
I represent the operating engineers, and we build pipelines, and I would invite, like Robert said, any of the elected officials to our training facility in Nelson County at Boston, Kentucky. And I'm sure that if the invitations, if Robert and put the invitations out, we will reciprocate. But we're about jobs, and I think this project's about jobs, that construction as well as future jobs. Thank you.
Thank you. Daniel Insco.
Hi, I'm Dan Insco, living in the northern part of the county. I've lived here all my life. The gentleman just mentioned jobs, and I know this gentleman's a union representative, and the gentleman just spoke that he was. My question, I was going to ask about local labor, but you, Mr. Lawson, said that you will use local labor whenever possible. The unions cut out a lot of the local guys that don't belong to their union. How's that going to work in incorporating local people into getting hired to do this work? And are you going to dedicate yourself to hiring only union labor, or will you hire possibly union or non-union labor?
Kentucky, it's local. We're going to use contractors who will put out the bidding process, and it's our desire to use local labor as much as we possibly can. And I'm sure the unions will be happy to provide much of that labor, but there may be other labor that's needed. I mean, for us to build this pipeline, we'll probably have 1,500 jobs. That's a lot of folks. We're going to need a lot of help in building that.
Okay.
This system.
What I'm looking at right now, well, this doesn't have anything to do with you guys, but 15 miles from here to build a power plant in Bradford County. I've tried 2 or 3 times to get a job there when it first started. I tried for 2 years to get a job there. Never got a call for it. Yeah, you go through that parking lot, there's license plates from all over the country, all the way from California, East Coast to West Coast. But a local guy can't get a job there. And that's what I'm wondering with this, are you going to bring in companies from outside of this county, 10 states away or something to do this work, or are you going to hire guys?
Something you need to realize that it's beyond construction. If the pipeline's in the ground, we look for contractors to do maintenance work for us. So it's after the construction's gone, we depend on labor locally, if you will, to provide maintenance for these systems. So I just want you to keep that in mind, that it's not just the 1,500 jobs that are out there initially with construction. Once the pipe's in the ground, there's other jobs, maintenance type jobs that we have to have for our facility.
And if one of my colleagues was here tonight, I would have asked him to answer this, but what he said before is he runs all of our Kentucky pipelines, and that they, almost all the contractors they use to do the maintenance and the other work once the pipeline is in the ground are Kentucky companies. So that's what they're looking for to, once we get it in place, we turn to the local communities to support our maintenance activities.
Okay. So, what businesses do we have here that you know of that would be the type of business to support your maintenance activities and have local citizens working for them doing that?
Bill, I can answer that. Go ahead. We've actually begun the process through our website at www.bluegrasspipeline.com, where any vendor that's looking to service the pipeline can leave us their information, and then we'll be happy to share that with the contractors who are looking to do work on this project. So there is a way, and early next year will be additional ways for contractors to use it. Let me say, we get calls from contractors every single day asking for us to be a part of this project. Okay. And we are happy to database that information. We're happy to pass it on to the responsible parties.
Okay. I have a couple more questions. Other concerns. Will the landowners be receiving any type of commission for the amount of product flowing through the property, or will it just be a one-time payment for the easement?
It'll be just a one-time payment and the crop damages.
Okay. Next 2 questions are safety oriented. How far apart are your shut-offs?
We'll have valves every 8 to 10 miles unless it's in, for example, an environmentally sensitive area, and we'll look at putting it a little closer. But for typically between 8 and 10 miles.
Okay. quick can you have an emergency response team here to handle anything that goes wrong?
Well,
One of your teams. I'm not talking about our local responders, our local fire departments. How quick can you have one of the teams from your company here?
Well, what we're going to do initially, when you look at pipeline control, there are motor operated valves, there are like electric valves along the pipeline system that we will close those and isolate if there were a release, isolate the release. We will have what we call an oil spill response organization, an OSRO, and they will be strategically contracts with OSRO strategically along the pipeline system so that they could respond within 5 to 6 hours, I would say, and that's just depending on where they are and where the release was.
Okay. Thank you.
Brenda Montgomery.
Hello, my name is Brenda Montgomery, and I certainly didn't expect to get asking a question, but I really thank you for coming, because I really wanted to hear what you had to say. And I think you've done a really good job explaining your project. I believe with all my heart that you would be totally safe. We were talking about the size of your pipes and things like that, but when I look at pictures of like bridges that fold under earthquakes, those people thought those bridges were really good, and they folded under the earthquake, the concrete buckles and all that. I guess my question is that my neighbor looks like he's selling, and he will get a profit. But if something happens, lots of us suffer. He's not the only one that suffers. So what happens if our lake is hurt, our river is hurt? How are you going to survive? How are you going to make it good? I feel like we're playing Russian roulette, and most of the time we're going to hit an empty chamber, we're going to be just fine. But if something happens, how do we go back? How we fix Kincaid Lake and the nature and the fish, how we fix our river, how we fix our creeks, how do we go back and fix them?
Sure. I mean, you know, the first step we're going to do is we're going to work with federal, state, and local authorities to start to remedy the situation. And we're going to work diligently with those authorities to try and do what's necessary to fix the problems and find solutions.
I actually want to start a little bit before that. You know, there is not a pipeliner around that will ever tell anybody that they can guarantee that no pipeline will happen. It just can't happen. Just like no driver can ever guarantee that they will not be involved in an accident. But what we start with where we are right now. And that is in trying to determine the route to the pipeline. We're trying, working with our people and engineers to try to avoid things like rivers, wherever we can. We try to avoid those type of areas to start with. And as we move through, we start with the design. What's, depending on where the pipe is going to be, what size wall thickness, what type of steel. Everything we're doing is looking at how do we take the steps to avoid a problem. Then once the construction is over, before any product is ever put into the line, we'll fill it with water and we will pressure it up. And we'll pressure it up to a pressure that we'll never see in operations. And we hold that pressure for 8 hours. If it passes the test, then that is ready to receive product. So before we ever put product in, from the time we select the route, we'll just select the construction technique, select the pipe, and ensure ourselves that the construction was done appropriately. Then we put the product in. And you've heard Ron talk about all the things we're going to do. And if there is an accident, then we will take the steps necessary to fix the problem.
But the question is, can it be fixed?
In most cases, the answer is yes.
If it hits our lake that's so important to our county, can it be fixed? If it hits our river, can it be fixed? I mean, maybe a farm could be fixed, maybe, but can our lake be fixed? Can our river be fixed? Can it be fixed?
Yes, it can.
How can it be fixed?
There's a lot of things that we can replace. A lot of it is understanding the product that we have. And the thing about natural gas liquids is most of it, this is a very rough number, about 3/4 of it will volatilize, it'll vaporize. So once it hits water, this product actually floats on top of water. It's very easy to recover that product. And with the trained personnel working with local response agencies, with our local emergency responders, we've been very successful in being able to do 100% cleanup and to be able to restore that back to the state's cleanup standards, which are a lot more stricter a lot of times than what was there before the movie.
What about the wildlife?
The wildlife?
Yes.
What specifically are you talking about?
Okay, like if our lake was damaged terrifically, a fish died. I know you couldn't fish it, I mean, I know you can, but what about, I mean, how much to our whole, you know, we got deer, we got fish, we got all kinds of animals, you know. How long would it take if our lake was sort of done to get back?
That's a hard question to answer without knowing how much was released, how much the lake was, how much product was sitting on top of that water. You know, the thing is about the quick recovery, getting people out there to respond quickly. The first thing that we look at is we look at, are there sensitive areas? We look at aquatic life. We have to take samples, and we have to make sure that the standards are not going to harm fish. Have there been fish kills in other incidents? I'm not saying with Williams, but I'm saying in general, in any release, sure. But it really depends on the scenario itself. It's kind of hard to answer, you know, that specific question.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have two gentlemen here that I don't have cards for. Either one of you want to take the place, please. Here for introduce yourself, please, because I don't have cards for you gentlemen.
One of my main concerns is, she was talking about groundwater. If you ever have a major break, and I was told this by somebody that knows quite a bit about pollution, if you have a major break, you cannot clean it up fast enough. How long would the evacuation take place? A year? 2 years? Nobody here could live here, period. Because it's uninhabitable. It'd be the same thing as Somalia and Russia. You cannot live in a polluted street with water. That's one of my main concerns. Our water supply is very important to the community in the county and the city. If there's a major break, you can count on this county not to at all. And nobody's going to be able to do this because there's not going to be any water free. Crops. What's going to affect us on crops? But that's the main thing in my concern. Another thing is, when you evacuate people on small break, how long does that take? How long are they going to be displaced out of their homes? A year? 6 months? You can't answer that, can you?
Well, typically, I use what happened in Dallas, south of Fort Worth last week. The residents were out at between 6 and 8 hours.
Okay, now, on easement, I also have this. If you have a company who wants to come in later on, you sell your easement easement to that company, or lease it, and they say, well, we want to put some more pipelines in the same easement. What's the next thing?
Well,
More pipelines in the area, that's what I'm saying.
Well, two things is the agreement between us and the landowner is set up to allow us to put one pipeline in the easement.
Yeah, that's the existing company, but if you, let's say you
If
sell out.
a third party wants to come in, first of all, without our permission, they couldn't put a pipeline in our easement. And more importantly is, the only way they could try to put a pipeline on the landowner's property is through an agreement that they have reached with the landowner.
Okay, so let's say you sell your whole company, that voids the contract.
No, if we transfer the company and the assets with the company, the right-of-way agreements would go to the new party. and they would have to honor the existing right-of-way agreements. The right-of-way agreements give us the right to put one pipeline in the property in a defined area on the property.
Okay, another one is, you know, and we all know, that the value of the property will go down. But these pipelines going through, especially the amount of chemicals that's going through. If a person wants to sell his property, would you or would you not be willing to help them compensate what the value was?
Well, I'm not sure we would agree with your underlying premise of your question.
I mean, if they had to sell a loss because of the pipeline.
Well, what our experience has been is that the existence of a pipeline on property does not adversely affect the property.
You would be willing to help them out.
What I just said is, it's our experience that the existence of a pipeline does not adversely impact the value of the
That's
property.
debatable. Very debatable. Also, insurance. Will they increase the insurance from homeowners and farmers? Who's going to help pay for that?
Well, again, our experience has been that the landowners have not seen any change in insurance premiums either.
But we, you know, you have heard any problems of insurance companies up in the cost because pipelines going through the possibility?
We had a meeting just like this in Scott County, just not very long ago. And one of the magistrate judges, that's his business, he's an insurance agent. And he confirmed that that is not a, help me out with the terminology that is used, that is
The
not.
frequency of anything, of a
Apparent
pipeline.
loss that would, an underwriter that would affect that premium. And he actually, you know, showed his business card and says, if anybody has that issue, they can come to me because that's not something that's going to increase your valuation. And let me talk about property valuation a little bit also, real quick. We do have language that we will put into our agreement if your assessor, your tax assessor, goes into your property that you sign an easement with us to put a pipeline on, and your valuation that your tax assessor puts on your property goes up because of our pipeline, we do have language in our agreement that says we will compensate you for that. Because that's not going to happen. They don't increase your value because of the pipeline.
No, they're going to get a business.
Underground.
I was also going to ask you about royalties and stuff.
Well, an easement is a real transaction. And
Yeah, but you'd be making a good sized profit.
Well, it goes back to the basics of what we're securing from each land. We're getting the right to put a pipeline. The landowner has to maintain the use of the property, so if they're a farmer, they farm right over the top of it. We compensate them for any lost crops, but essentially we're giving the property back to them to use as they previously had with, you know, two restrictions. One, can't build building over, and two, we don't want trees planted. But, you know, we're not extracting, you know, minerals from the landowner, which are royalties are designed to do, because they're designed to repay the landowner for depletion of the natural resources, the underlying mineral.
What's the depth of the easement?
We start out with 3 feet is the minimum depth, and we are working with landowners, you know, especially farmers, based on their farming techniques, is generally how far down we've gone.
We've gone down as deep as 60 inches.
How about the depth under the pipe?
Well, that's the top of the pipe
Yeah,
to the surface.
How
I'm
far
not sure.
down is the easement for the rights go? Can a guy go under?
So, help me.
So in other words, are you asking whether or not we could put another pipe underneath?
No, I'm saying, so let's say somebody wants to build an underground house, can he go dig it under your pipe 10 feet below?
I've been doing this a long time, I don't think I've ever had that question.
That would be similar to building on top of the pipeline.
Yeah.
You've got that 50-foot easement. But I want to go back to your first premise that if there were released, you compared it to Chernobyl. That's simply not true. If you look like we talked before, we've got block valves, mainline block valves every 8 to 10 miles. And depending upon the diameter of the pipe, you're looking at between 5 to 10,000 barrels. That's not going to defoliate an area. And we typically, currently, our emergency response operations is that we even limit it less than that. So it's not going to be Chernobyl, and like Bill and Mike said earlier, typically you're back in your residence within hours. And we go back to the lake scenario that we kill all the fish in the lake. That's simply not, you can't do it based upon the volume of the material that's in the pipe. The 3/4 of it or more is going to vaporize. It's going to be a vapor cloud. The liquid part of it is minimal. So just, I want to make sure that everyone understands that analogy to Chernobyl and people being out of their house and this town going away, just that's not accurate at all.
Okay, but you're a man, I'm a man, we're all human, and humans do make mistakes. Period.
That's why this is the most safest means of transportation for this type of product, because if you put it on a rail car, that leads to mistakes of a driver getting in front of that train and having a serious.
That's also what happened to Norman. They made a mistake. They fixed it. But they had everything down pat.
But we're not dealing with, as Ron was pointing out, we're not dealing with the same types of materials. This is not radioactive. You know, we're transporting a finite amount of product between one point. Can we go back on a comment that Jim had made? You know, there are other ways to transport these liquids to the marketplace. And rail is a viable solution. It's more expensive, but it's a viable solution. So if you're going to move, well, we hope to be moving on this system. We've given the privilege of building this line and granted easements. You would need to move 400,000 barrels a day of NGLs. You would need 17,000 rail cars a day moving up and down the line in order to make that happen. And so, if you think about, you know, with pipelines, we're trying to avoid all the sensitive areas we can avoid, keeping away from population centers and other areas. With rail, you get, you know, the rail lines as they've been built today.
But now on your you say if things would happen where the value of the property went down, you would either not help people with the value, or you would. If it went down.
We are not.
You're not. Okay. You need to clear.
But we don't, you know, we've seen studies that indicate there's no difference or no change in property values. So we have a different experience than the one you're describing.
Okay. Thank you.
Go ahead, gentlemen.
My name is Richard Wilson. I live in Franklin County, and my job is in Clark County. I work for a geotechnical drilling company, and I'm one of the small ones that hopes to have an opportunity to work on this pipeline should it move forward from this. We employ 22 people from Kentucky that would be associated with this. Their involvement in a project such as this would be where these crossings occur, provide the geotechnical drilling back to the geologists and other engineers who are coming for these crossings. That's part of it. But even a larger thing that I think that I want to go back and listen to you discuss a little bit more is on the easements themselves. You talk about you cannot build permanent structures or things like that. All right, you can't plant large trees. What other restrictions do you have within those easements?
Well, it's a 50-foot wide permanent easement. So you can build a house on top of that easement or a permanent structure. Other than that, you can farm on top of it. You can go back and put your corn or tobacco or whatever it was that you were farming and continue to earn your income.
You can have, I mean, you know, in some places where we're crossing pastures or fields, people have fences that they can put fences back up, including rock fences. And so we try to allow people to go back the way it was, exactly the way it was construction.
Another thing that within the process of moving this from Pennsylvania and West Virginia, or currently the larger production from northern Ohio is going on. And you're drying the gas, you're in the production of this with the liquids coming out as well as the gas, which is dried out because this is a wet gas. And the gas itself is being used for heating and electrical generation. And this is the other resource that you're discussing about moving and using for plastics. Don't waste the resource. If we, as you pointed out, a ridiculous number of moving 17,000 tank cars a day, that's almost absurd to be able to do that. Without this, what happens?
Well, right now, because we have been so successful as a nation in developing our natural gas resources, the price of natural gas has fallen fairly dramatically over the last 5 to 7 years. By building this pipeline, we are essentially bottlenecking the Utica and Marcellus shelves so that additional natural gas can be developed. Because when you develop natural gas in those areas, certain of those areas, you're actually pulling up the natural gas liquids, which makes it more profitable for those producers to drill. In those areas, and you know folks out in the big sandy area out in eastern Kentucky, in some of the traditional dry gas areas, they're not producing much gas, they're not drilling very many new wells simply because the economics don't work. By having the ability to move the natural gas liquids to market, the producers are able to produce more natural gas, which has a direct benefit for the state of Kentucky. Because Kentucky is in this really great spot because in Lebanon, Ohio, which is one of the trading points for natural gas, it's actually trading over the last 3 to 5 months somewhere between 20 and 40 cents lower than what it has been down the Gulf Coast. So that means natural gas that can feed northern Kentucky and down through our Texas gas system is they can secure it for cheaper than what they can bring it from the traditional Gulf Coast area, which it almost ensures continued low electric prices and having very competitive electric rates to attract new business to the area.
Thank you.
Can I ask one quick question, very briefly? I know that you mentioned that you were going to be drilling under the waterways. I'm actually on your website right now, and I know this is contrary to what you said, so I'm trying to clarify which is accurate. Your website says that smaller streams and creeks can be safely crossed using an open cut method of a pipeline bridge built above the high water mark. And I know you guys just said they'll all be under the ground. Which is that? Because obviously there's a discrepancy between the two.
Well, let me clarify the discrepancy. A pipeline bridge is a temporary means to be able to, it goes away just for construction purposes. It's a temporary feature. Open cut method is different than HDD, horizontal drilling. What it means, especially if there's not water currently in there, we can safely open cut, a small creek, for example. The pipeline will still be buried underneath. So there is no above ground piping whatsoever.
Okay, so with the open cut method, you can actually cut through the bedrock? Am I understanding that correct?
I don't know what the soil features are, so I'm not.
I think the open cut is a term of art that pipelines use. Basically, it means is like if we're going across, let's take the stream out. Let's say we're going across farmland. What we will do is we will actually come in and dig a ditch. We'll separate, if it's farmland, we'll separate the topsoil out, and then you'll lay the pipe in the back over it. That is essentially what an open cut is. If we're going across a dry stream, and the environmental agencies have said, yes, you may use this methodology. We have to get the methodology approved. And we would actually dig a trench, put the pipeline in, fill it back under, fill it up in the pipeline, which would be below ground.
So before you are allowed to use that method, you will have to obtain approval from the environmental agency?
Yes.
Yes. And there is the risk with open cut method of the creek going under the bedrock? I'm believe or here, yes. That is, if the creek just disappears from that. It has happened here in this county before.
a lot of scarring underneath the pipe.
We're open cutting dry beds, is what we're first looking at. If there's a small creek, we're talking 18 inches across, and there happens to be a little water going through there, I mean, that's perfectly safe to do that. It doesn't affect the creek whatsoever. If there's a waterway, especially if it's not like a Section 10 water, which definitely has to be stored underneath, there's approved environmental methods for doing that. You can completely move the water around during the construction procedure while the pipe is being laid.
Is there any chance the water's driving underneath the pipe, undermined it?
No.
Well, thank you, Mr. Dr. Thank you. Meet me tomorrow, and I'll show you one.
I can't speak for other companies and what they've done. I can only speak for the approved construction methods that we have to follow per federal, state, and local regulations.
All right. We've been sitting here for about 2 hours, and I am so proud of this community, that it's been civil, it's asked good questions. Hopefully you've gotten a lot of good answers. I'm going to tell you that whatever you do in life, you make sure you do the right thing. And you study it real well, and you make decisions based on good information. And so going out of here, hopefully you've gotten better information on what you've heard here, that you can make decisions on.
I have one question. Can I get a question real quick? Is there a list of what exact chemicals are going to be going through the pipeline? An exact list, MSDS, something, of all the chemicals?
Well, what we can tell you is what we're moving is it's called a Y-grade stream.
Is it waste?
No, it is.
Frac waste?
No, it's not frac waste. It is natural gas liquids that are removed from the natural gas through a processing plant. And they consist of ethane, propane, butane, and natural gasoline.
So that's four, that's it, that's all that's in there.
Well, I think that there are some nuances between those, but yes, they are naturally occurring.
There's no other components that could be a health hazard to anyone who may inhale it or ingest it through the water. No health hazard at all.
Well, no.
You don't want to inhale, you don't want to inhale propane and butane.
But
there's
a
nothing
list that I could get?
Yes.
Of what it is?
Yeah, we'll provide you after this meeting, the shutting the meeting down, they told you it's wide grade, and I will make sure that you have that information, so after this is finished, you and I can have a conversation about it.
All right, I'm going to break. Yes, ma'am. And make it quick, please.
My name is Ruth Van Camper, and I live in Pendleton County, and I would just like to know, is there a map available showing exactly where you project this pipeline to go? This map that we received tonight tells us basically nothing. I mean, it's just like all over.
Each individual landowner will have that, information as far as the exhibit goes. But as far as somebody else, it's a very private transaction between a company and a landowner.
That's a whole. Wait a minute, hold on. We've been really good tonight here. Let's don't embarrass ourselves,
We're all
please.
maybe miles away from one another, and I think it would be nice if we could all see exactly where you project this to go, so that we can compare ourselves. Transparent, remember?
Well, we're still working on it.
We're still working through the process.
We're still working on it. So we're
Right now, we are still working on the process. Now, I will tell you that if the route changes, all that money that has gone into the hands of all the Kentuckians stays in their hands. It doesn't.
Oh, I'm not interested in knowing the people's names. I would like to know the route that it takes. And I'm sure that you have that.
Well, let me ask you a question. Why would you like that? Because that is a very private.
Jay, we will get a better map to the judge.
So we will get a better map from the judge. And this is an important question because you may have this coming through your neighborhood or near your parcel. And eventually we will have to get different agreements with the county, with local areas, where we will need to let them know exactly where this pipeline is going, because we'll have to cross under a road or we'll file a permit. But right now today, we could tell you that it's going on Bill's property, and then 2 weeks from now, it isn't going on Bill's property because we weren't able to make a strategic acquisition of some property. And what happens is we tell folks that it's going on Bill's property, 2 weeks later it's not, and Bill's still getting antagonistic phone calls. People ask us, when we are contracting with a private landowner, they ask us, many of them beg us, please don't talk to folks about how much I'm getting for my easement, and also please don't tell folks about my private business matters. But there will come a point, and rightfully so, where this is no longer a private land matter. This is a permit is needed, or there is some sort of public process that begins. And at that point, we will absolutely and rightfully disclose it.
You have to absolutely know whether or not you're going to come down Route 10, how far you project you're coming down in the northern part of Pendleton County. Now, I'm not the slickest marble in the bag, but by God, I know something. And I know that you should know how far down you're planning on going in Pendleton County.
It would seem like, if we haven't built a pipeline in the past, it would seem so. But we didn't say to you today that we have 100% of the land acquired in Pendleton County.
I'm not interested in that.
I understand that, but without having 100% of the land under our control for this project, we can't tell you where it's going. Because we are still doing...
Before you get to us. So if you see the
Well,
map.
ma'am, as I committed, we will get a better map.
They promised us to get a better map. Yes, sir, I'm gonna allow you two gentlemen, but.
Real quick.
We've got to shut it down. We can't
Yes,
get
sir.
it all like.
I'm tired.
Yes, so the gentleman in the pink shirt.
Maybe we real quick have the names of these two gentlemen standing here and their connections with this.
I'm a project representative with the Bluegrass Pipeline. My name is Jay Vincent.
Jay Vincent?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
And sir, you're good.
And which organization are you with, sir?
I'm a resident, sir.
Okay.
And
Where?
Pendleton County.
Pendleton
Peach
County.
Grove, 1136 Garvey Road.
And what is your name?
William Matthews.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, Jay. And you, sir?
Name's Jeff Busick.
Busick?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
And sir, you had a question back in the back.
This is for you, Judge. I was told that according to the Kentucky Environmental Cabinet, the Williams Company does not have the power of eminent domain in Kentucky. Is that accurate?
I can only tell you what I hear. I don't think they do, and I'm making that comment from what I know about it. What I know about eminent domain in Kentucky, I don't think that it falls on a private company. But I can tell you that the legislature doesn't know themselves, because that comment was made in a public hearing in Frankfurt, that they didn't know. So if they don't know, I don't know how I can expect me to know that. I would hope, I'm saying this personally from Henry Bertram, not from a county judge, I would hope that they don't have the power of eminent domain. I think that is only necessary when it's a government purpose and and there's no other way around it.
And that was my understanding, is that it has to be something that the government,
You saw me take my hat off.
that a private industry cannot come in and take land from you by eminent domain.
That's my feeling.
And I think that the people of Pendleton County, I mean, if we look at the seal of Kentucky, it says united we stand. I think we should stand by that.
Well, I mean, that's fine.
Judge, may I follow up on that eminent domain question? My name is Robert, for the guy that happens at 1775 Downs Road here in Pendleton County. In regard to eminent domain, if we assume for a moment that these companies or their combine do enjoy the power of eminent domain, if we assume for a moment that they do, is not the landowner then entitled to a trial to determine the value of the property?
Absolutely.
Okay. And if the property owner is entitled to a trial to determine the value of the property, could you tell us where would that trial be held?
Circuit court here in this county.
Here in Pendleton County. I hope anyone considering selling or settling with this company keeps in mind
that if eminent domain can be exercised, then they can take the companies to court and have it determined, the value determined here in Pendleton County.
All right, well, we're gonna have to shut down, because we're been 2.5 hours. And I thank you all, I really do. Pendleton County, I'm proud of the work you made yourself, conducted yourself. It shows that we are a caring community. And again, I said earlier, make sure whatever decision in life you make is an informed. So, think about what you're doing. And, you know, I want to ask this company to stay here. If you've got private questions, if you need to ask them on the phone, it'll take a little bit longer to try to answer them. We, as fiscal court,